Hello sirs, here is Grandmaster Andrea from Chess Strategies 1. Now we will see a tricky line against the Dutch defense. But first, let me remind you to like, share and subscribe Chess Strategies 1. This is very beautiful chess channel. So, after d4, f5, we have the Dutch defense. You can see that f5 is a strange move. Actually, it is a risky system, and black plays it when he wants to play for a win. If white plays in a standard way, following the main lines, let's say c4, black has many systems. Black can play the Leningrad variation and play with a fianchetto, which is it is extremely double-edged. It seems a fianchetto variation of the King's Indian, where black already pushed the pawn to f5. Black can also play the so-called Stonewall with d5, c6 and bishop d6 idea. So if white plays in this way, black can continue with d5. If white plays, I don't know, g3, black plays c6, then bishop d6, castle knight e4. And this is positionally risky for both sides, but it's very ambitious for black. But black can also play the classical variation, which is d6 followed by bishop e7, castle, knight e4, and still the game is complex, and both players can play for a win, but black has its counter chances. Against d4 f5, black wants to play an ambitious and tricky opening. I would like to suggest you an interesting trick, a very tricky counter move, which is very annoyed to face, and this move is bishop g5. This white's idea. Well, against the big majority of white's moves, black was going to play knight g5, but now, in case of knight f6, but now after knight f6, we are ready to trade the knights, and then we can play, after damaging black's pawn structure, we can play e3, if d5, c4, and white stands better in this pawn structure. White has a slight but pleasant advantage. Black's pawn structure is broken, the king side is weaker, and white is better. Here, black's main line are many, and black can try some strange move with c6 or g6, but white is fine. White can play, you know, c3, knight d2, e4, white is fine, but the most direct move for black is h6. It's interesting to know h6, because black's idea is that if white retreats the bishop along this diagonal, then black can simply develop his knight, and if the bishop goes to h4, then the bishop doesn't have a lot of mobility and can be attacked. For example, black can continue with g5, and the bishop doesn't have many squares. So how to deal with g5 and bishop g3? Is white in trouble? No, white is not in trouble, and we know this. This was played. White won a game in 1896, so 2 centuries ago. So actually, this variation is good for white, and it has been known for a long time. But let's see why. Because even recently, some strong player with white, actually, 2600 player, theoretician, a very strong player, stronger than I, Priorun, lost a game. So if such a strong player like Priorun can enter in this variation with black, every of your opponent can fail into this trick. So the first thing to know is that f4 is not good. Why? Now we will see. First, let me tell you that the main moves are knight f6 or bishop g7. But anyway, after knight f6, white can avoid f4 forever, or white can counterattack with h4 with the idea to open the king side, and f4 is not possible because of this move. Black cannot take because of the pin, because then the rook would fall and white would stand better. Bishop g7 is another move, but then e3 is possible and black cannot play f4 anymore, and white has a good game. White can continue with c3, knight d2, even h4, why not sometimes, and white stands better. But what happens after f4? So the bishop is trapped. Is white in trouble? No, white is not in trouble, because white is plays e3. e3 is a very strong move, which counterattacks the pawn on f4 and threatens the fool's mate, because this diagonal has been weakened. Actually, the fool's mate is the fastest way to lose a chess game. After g4, e5, f3, queen h4, if a player weakens this diagonal, can lose extremely quickly. And this is something similar. Here we can use the fool's mate to refute black's idea. Now f takes g3 loses because of queen h5. Now h5 was played in some games, and it was played also in a tournament held in New York almost 200 years ago. A game between Tid against Delmar, and here black's idea is that if pawn takes f4, maybe black can insist with his idea to trap the bishop, but white can play bishop d3, renewing the threat of the fool's mate. The game continues with rook h6, where the rook covers the g6 square, but white can win with the deflection of the rook. The game ended in just a couple of moves with queen takes h5 exclamation mark. Check. Only move queen rook takes and then bishop g6. So what to do with black here? Okay, black can play bishop g7 and create a square for the king, but then e takes wins because white has an extra pawn and a better position. So what can black do? Well, in a recent game, in some games between beginners, and in a recent game between two professional players, Bauer, a very strong chess player with 2,623 rating points, and Piorun with 2,600 rating points. Black played e5, and black's idea is that the king has the e7 score, and the bishop is trapped anyway. I mean, the bishop cannot escape from g3. White took, now pawn takes. So, is this enough for black? No, white is winning anyway. White played queen h5 check, now the king escapes, but then the game continued with bishop takes f4. A very beautiful sacrifice by Bauer, by the strong French player, the very strong chess player, I would say. Here, white saved the bishop. If black doesn't take the bishop, black would be a pawn down with a horrible king. So black took, and now white gave a check with a double attack. and white won very quickly. After king f7, it was possible to take the rook, but white is not in a hurry and played bishop c4, king g6. Now white repeated twice. Probably after king g7, white wanted to take the rook. Now with bishop g7, then check, and then the queen escapes, and white is winning. If well, black played d5, white took. Now if king g6, bishop e4, then black is lost. If bishop g7, queen h6, knight f6, then white will develop all his pieces with an easy victory. White has a decisive attack and a decisive material advantage. After bishop takes, black decided to give the queen for some material, but anyway the situation is hopeless for black. Black has only 2 pieces for queen and pawn, so with white simply developed his pieces, took other pawns, and white can activate his pieces, offering some exchanges, because if you go to the endgame, white will win, but also in the middle game. Here knight d5, very strong move. Now in case of knight takes c5, white would take on f6 first and then on e5 winning. In case of knight takes d5, then queen f7 and knight g6 would win. So here black played bishop d6, here queen g3 check, and here black is lost, because if king h7 check and mate, if king f8, knight g6, winning the bishop and the game. So after f5, bishop g5 is a tricky variation, and this direct attempt to trap the bishop failed. The ancient attempts to play h5 failed because of bishop d3 and this checkmate, and the most recent attempt to play e5, give the e7 square for the king and keep the bishop trapped, fails because of this check and Bauer's bishop sacrifice. So I hope that you will be able to use this trick and win some games. I hope that you will meet the Dutch defense with bishop g5, that your opponent will try to trap your bishop, and you will counterattack with a decisive sacrifice. So thank you very much for your attention and good luck. Bye bye.